Welcome to a Hero's Welcome podcast, where stories, healing, and culture meet. Every episode, we invite you to listen, reflect, and be curious.
This podcast is a space for mental health therapists where we talk about the real work of healing.
Whether you're a mental health professional, a proud geek, or somewhere in between, you're in the right place.
So let's jump in.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of a Hero's Welcome podcast. I'm your co-host, Marila Cardiego, and I'm joined by the one who always makes me laugh, whether I want to or not.
That's Marshall. But me, I'm Liliana Baylon. I'm your co-host today, and we are here with our special guest, Marshall. We don't even need your last name. Can we acknowledge that? Everyone knows who Marshall is.
He's like Prince. He's just like one name.
Marshall, let's do that. Let's just drop your last name.
I'm on board. No problem. It'll make my signature easier too.
True.
It really is a lot of L's happening.
You do. Same as my name. Lots of L's. Marshall, you have revamped your website and you're doing lots of trainings on spirituality and dissociation, which I think it goes perfectly with everything that we're questioning right now in regards to our field, our lives, our political environment, current events. How do you feel? How aligned are your topics with what everyone is questioning right now?
Yeah, it always feels a little spooky or eerie when you start kind of working on a course of study that then, socio-political landscape comes and lands right in the middle of.
Yeah.
I don't think I caused it. I want to be clear. I don't think that it's my responsibility, but I think these topics have always been relevant, but it feels especially relevant now when there are just people everywhere that the best thing that they can do to protect their spirit is just to flee from it a little bit and to have some distance between what they notice and what they feel and how they process. And, just delayed time is such an act of generosity sometimes. Not feeling your body all the time is an act of love sometimes. Not having to think every thought or feel every feeling is exactly what survival requires sometimes. And I don't think any of those things cause us from being spiritual. In fact, sometimes they enhance it. And the field of mental health doesn't always want to allow for that kind of roundness. We see dissociation as a symptom that's meant to be eliminated. And instead of, a state of mind that serves a very real purpose. And sometimes it's creating obstacles for clients who want to work on it. And other times it's exactly the thing they need in order to walk back into their lives with the amount of help that they can afford to have. And even sometimes it's a gift and it's a spiritual inheritance. And I think if we can start filling in some of the parts that we have overly flattened in time in our field, that the clients will show up more often and they won't feel like they have to leave certain parts of themselves outside of our offices.
Yeah. I love the clarification that you did not cause this boom to have happened, but I'm thinking that you tend to gravitate towards things that you are seeing more and more kind of show up and use your platform to talk about those things that aren't necessarily talked about openly. I know in my own schooling and programming, it was like, if you suspect dissociation, like you refer them to the hospital. That is a higher level of care. And now it is like, well, dissociation is me doom scrolling on my phone or watching my same comfort show on repeat so that I don't have to fully engage in things.
Yeah, absolutely. And dissociation doesn't mean that intuition has gone offline.
Right.
And so we can find a way to straddle both worlds. We don't have to, I know we've talked about ableism before in the three of us, but the fact that we have a hierarchy of mental illnesses, that it's not presented that way, but we all know the way the field has handled things. And you're right, Maria, we have been told by supervisors and teachers and prominent authors that dissociation is more risky than other presentations. And every time we meet a client and we think they are sicker than the previous person, we are increasing their sense of feeling disabled and then sending them out into the world, not just feeling that maybe they came for help, but in some ways maybe feeling sicker than they came in. And I think we can do better. I think we can do better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is where I appreciate all your trainings, because you're being pushing the idea or the curiosity of what if dissociation is a survival skill? What if it's your wisdom telling you you have to do this in order to survive this moment or to survive this experience? And even in non-traditional healings, dissociation is a way of coping. And in non-traditional healings, they tell us how the body is so wise in that moment in order to separate. And then what is it that we can do to come back? Or how do we teach clients actually to come back and be mindful when they choose to do that? And you've been talking about this for years. I think our field is finally catching up. But again, because of hierarchy or standards or not understanding, we still think of that is a symptom that we have to treat and do something about it, when in reality is a wisdom, or it can be a wisdom.
And I think therapists have been taught to be afraid when it enters their offices. And fear is what causes trauma-related dissociation for the client. And then we put our fear of them on top of the fear they came in with, and that feels like an unfair burden. That's not the way that we should see any adaptation. And there are, we can all acknowledge that there are levels of dissociation. There's a continuum. And so there are some people that are living with so much pain-based fragmentation that it's not that our consciousness shouldn't raise to be more responsible or to be more involved or more of a co-organizer, but that doesn't have to equate seeing someone as sicker than someone else. And I don't think we've always had language for knowing how to do that. And the other thing I think that we see a lot is our field has been taught all dissociation comes from trauma. It's all symptom, instead of it also having gift or ability potentially connected with it. And I want to be responsible that if I come in and I see someone's different state of consciousness as a symptom that needs to be targeted, and it wasn't from a trauma, have I started meddling with the family line of giftedness? Am I eliminating something that could be passed on to descendants as a spiritual ability that some cultures might have worked centuries to cultivate? And then my lack of humility and awareness, my presence of fear, has caused me to meddle in these cellular stories. I don't want this to be an easy thing. And what I said to a training recently is, I want desperately for us to think with more complexity, but stop acting complex. Like, think hard, act simple. In our field, does the other way around when it comes to dissociation. We think very simply, and then we try all these complicated interventions. That's reverse. I think that's backwards of how we should be moving.
Yeah. But that's important, right? Because right now you just talk about cultural humility or cultural responsibility. And there's another word that was just coined. I just don't remember, but they combine cultural competence and cultural humility. Because, we like to complicate things too when it comes to culture, and the evolution of culture has come with too many words now. But I love that you went there, because it's true. We go to study. We are in a field that believe that we are experts on everything, and we should have answers, and we should make things very complicated and treat everything because we're gods. Yes, I said it. But I love the idea of cultural humility, because the idea that you keep sharing in your trainings, which is, can I be curious about the person in front of me? Can I not make assumptions about them, but be curious about them and their lineage, right? Because what if this is a gift that I don't understand, and now I'm labeling it as something that is wrong? And we need more of this. And even the parallel process of all the new therapists, or and some therapists, period, that believe you should be a blank statement. Well, that's a form of dissociation. I don't exist to be in front of you so that I can be a blank template for you. That's fucking dissociation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I love, Marshall, that you're pointing out, we in the mental health field, like we view people as complex, right? Like each individual, right? Like how many times is that said in training? Each individual in front of you is going to be unique and nothing is going to be cookie cutter. And then it's like, but we have this book in black and white and these symptoms that must be met to have this diagnosis. And this diagnosis means these things. And it's like, how are we so split off and, holding these two things that are very contradictory to each other? And it really does, dissociation. Bipolar was another one, and any personality disorder, it was like, no, you're not equipped to handle that. That is something that needs higher level of care. You get them out of your office. And it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're adding to the trauma in the name of being helpful.
Wait, unless you're an intern and then you get all those clients because you need the experience.
And even we'll give an assessment and we'll be like, oh, 29, fine. 30, oh no.
Oh, no.
Like what are we doing?
Yeah.
How are we not just saying that my job is to show up and to welcome where you are? And it might be that we move slow sometimes, and sometimes we might move quicker, and sometimes, and there, I should always be asking, in the same example, hey, client, I want to check in with your body, but I want your body to decide if that feels okay. Like, do you give consent? Like, for it, like we can be navigating these things with so much compassion and care that doesn't have to be caution.
Yeah.
It's when we treat people with caution that enters into the relational field, and that has meaning to the other person. They walk out, have felt that they were being handled, instead of met. And I think we can all rise up a bit, and figure out how we want to overcome some of the generational wisdom that the field has cultivated around these dynamics.
I love that. Are you, because of the world we're existing and surviving in right now, are you seeing more of this show up? I know you do consultations and trainings. Like, is this starting to become kind of a bigger conversation? Do you think that's partly because of what we are surviving right now?
Well, I know I'm dissociating more.
Yeah.
So probably, I think, Maria, that there's probably so many intersecting factors. You brought up one, just kind of the nature of how we interact with the world, having so much information fed to us so quickly. I think the natural byproduct of that has to be some dissociation to counterbalance some of the hyperarousal that's inherent to that. So I think that's a dynamic. I think there's so much harm and so much risk and so much threat everywhere that there's only so much of that you can afford to attend to. But then there's dissociation and there's cultivated ignorance, and so those are even different states. And because not all people groups have the privilege to get to dissociate from threat,
Right.
And so it even that becomes a bit of a complication. I'm seeing more and more mixed state presentations, where we make it sound like in our field, you're either regulated or you're hyper aroused or you're hypo aroused. And I'm watching people, come in with a limb in all three states. And I think we're all starting to realize, oh, that chart wasn't meant to be literal.
Yes.
Right.
That's not how the human mind actually works. And so I'm seeing more of those dynamics. And I just think people are afraid and enraged And when the intensity of those emotions are so prominent, yeah, I think we're going to have to see people float away. Then it becomes an individual presentation of how does this person dissociate?
Yeah.
And is it more thought based or emotion based or body based or time based? How pronounced? Is it subtle and really well masked? Or is it very prominent and noticeable, visible? And so the presentations are still really varied, but and to be honest, clients and and other kinds of helping professionals are far more aware of dissociation. And whenever we start learning about a phenomenon, I think that also increases it a little bit. It's kind of like there's just like a cool mental health topic every decade or something, and,
ADHD was all the rage. Yep.
yeah, it seems like dissociation has been having its time of going around TikTok and people getting, 20 seconds of information about it. And I'm not mad at any of those things, but I do think those are all factors as to why we might hear it talked about and see it more. But I don't think just because maybe someone identified with something over a video it's not any less valid as to what they're trying to say. It's kind of like when a kid would come into a play therapy session and all they would want to do is play out scenes from a movie. There's a reason why that movie is lodged in them. And so even if maybe we wouldn't say they have the same struggle as the character they're playing out, there's an identification that's trying to communicate something. So it feels the same no matter how it arrives in our office. There's a message to be heard.
Yeah.
I love that, right? Because now we're going to, even in dissociation, I love that you asked the question, how does this person dissociate? Which I think it's a really important question, not only with clients, but with supervisees, because there's a parallel process. And then can we also start talking about how there's certain disassociations that are acceptable? So now we're saying if you are just scrolling, that's not okay. But if you're reading, oh my God, you're reading. That is so good. So now we're deciding what levels of dissociations are acceptable.
The hierarchy again, right?
Yes, the hierarchy again. If you're watching trashy TV, oh my God. But if you're watching documentaries, oh my God. If you are spending all this time on, whatever it is. So it seems like, again, that hierarchy of I get to decide what form of dissociation is acceptable and not acceptable, what form of addiction, if we want to label that too, or what form of. So here again, that projection and those labels that we continue insisting in our field to do in order to prescribe something.
You're exactly right, Liliana. Because I'm using those four domains of thought, feeling, body, and time. That comes from the Fruin and Lanius model around trauma-related altered states of consciousness. And when I've started really playing with those domains, what I've realized is you see how much our field privileges thought domain. Yeah. Because if someone can come in and their mask or their regulation lives in the thought world and they can speak coherently, we aren't trained to notice that time and body and emotion might be gone. Or maybe we might start picking up, I'm asking a feeling question and they're responding only with thought.
Yeah.
But to be honest, some of our clinical models like move people there. And so if we are over privileging only one domain of someone, we're not getting the whole spirit.
Yeah.
We aren't holding spirituality. You have to give all aspects of a person equal right to be noticed and also equal right to step aside, and it's that permission that I think starts to reconnect people to their intuition, which, what greater goal is there if you come out of a healing relationship but to have increased connection to your own intuitive ability? That's what spirituality is there's a knowing in me that's reliable. And my dissociation sometimes might be muting my knowing, but other times it is the knowing. And we have to be open to all of that.
Yeah. Well, and even like that, right? I love that you bring in this spirituality because most people still confuse spirituality and religion.
Mm-hmm.
And we go again, because I see religion more of, I'm telling you what to do, labeling what you're doing. You have to prescribe this if you're following this religion, which is completely different than that wisdom of your spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah, that becomes dogma. And I think absolutely, like, religion can be an amazing resource for so many of our people if it helps, keep them organized and anchored, if it's providing them resources. But you do see when it starts to cross over into like any resource, it can become abusive whenever it's then overriding, your own sense of also knowing something. In an ideal world, what's organized knowing or ancestral knowing or pre-recorded knowing should get to meet our sense of perception of all of that. And I think that's where religion and spirituality can really dance really beautifully, in full. Neither of you will be surprised by this, but in full transparency, in addition to some medical trauma, there's some religious trauma in my background. And so that's not something I find as an available resource to me at this season in life. But spirituality stays a resource, regardless of your stated beliefs. It can be from agnosticism to, one of the major organized religions to, some small group that maybe no one even has a name for. But they're all equally accessing of spirit. Could be theoretically, or they could be really, really hurtful.
Everything has that potential, I think. But yeah, and I think that that's really helpful, because I know we've seen an increase of people seeking services because of religious-based trauma, and being able to help them separate spirituality from the organized religion is one of the big steps for them, because if they've been I was going to say entrapped, but if they've been involved in an organized religion that did become dangerous or abusive towards them, losing that feels really big and scary, because everything is so enmeshed in those systems.
I love that, Maria, because I think one of the things that often feels true is when things are happening in the world around us that is not allowing a position of non-duality, and you are being forced between binary options that are forced and not real, they're made up, we lose health. We lose perspective, we lose security. I have a friend in the room with me right now, and one of the ways that we're often talking to one another is saying, okay, two things are true right now. Like, almost like it's become a conversational habit for us. And I think right now in our world, very few groups of people will allow two things to be true. And that is forcing split. That is forcing disconnect from spirit. That is then creating a version of dissociation. Because we should get to have co-occurring streams of consciousness, and anything that says that that's not real is limiting our ability to be fully human and alive.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The fear of being canceled if you are right and I am wrong, or vice versa, right? But I want to come back to your ancestral knowing, because we have known each other for a while, and you have helped me connect to be curious about my ancestors, and not because I was born just in another country, but because of my family culture. And I love this, especially since George Floyd, there was this wanting, more and more people wanted to go and tap and be interested in learning about this. But now also this ancestral knowing is becoming very commercial because of our field.
Yeah.
So same thing as the spirituality, right? Which is very tied to religion, and I'm telling you what to do, and you have to give me money, and this is right and wrong. Even now, the term ancestral knowing, and seeing so many things on social media in our field about these kinds of rituals, it's also really scary. So those two parts can coexist. People being interested in learning about, And then people also misusing same thing as religion, same things as dissociation, like not understanding, and then just monetizing it, which now we're talking about colonizing all over again when it comes to all these topics. But what do you think about, if you want to share, because I love when you share, what do you think about people misusing their ancestral knowing to make money right now? That's my all says it all, but if you want to say anything.
I don't mind speaking about that at all. I mean, the compassionate part of me knows that there's so much scarcity mindset,
Yeah.
and people are afraid, and even that sometimes might be a non-conscious part that's like, oh, this seems to be a way people are finding a way to survive, and that I can understand. But I think we can become deeply irresponsible when we're chasing a popular topic that maybe hadn't been at home in us, and I have some friends that are teaching in those areas, and they're people I know that have been practicing with themselves in this way for a long time, and that feels very soothing to me. I don't know that about all the people who are teaching and writing. I'm hoping that it's not just, they and the robots got together, had a conversation, and decided to tell you what they learned last week. That I deeply hope that if you're going to start sharing with groups of people about how to access their own ancestry, then that's been a practice that you've been personally going through and that you've been mentored in. And that's not a thing you read a book about and then have enough knowledge to facilitate. So I have like so many topics for me. I get a little tight when something becomes mainstream.
Yeah.
That feels maybe it hasn't been all the way thought through.
Yeah.
And also I get a little tight when certain subjects start to show up, and maybe we're having the same night. We're like, oh, this is a topic that really has been largely cultivated and inspired and brought to us from people groups that are not represented in those who are primarily doing the teaching.
Wow.
That feels uncomfortable to me. And at some point, I don't I don't think the responsibility lies in the people who are trying to make a living exclusively. I think that they need to make sure they're checking motivations, just like I need to be, and I know you two do as well. But it's the consumers. Like, how are you vetting, where you're getting information? Are you just chasing, the authors who make you feel a certain way and give you a sense of belonging? Or are you making sure that there's some pattern of study and self-report that qualifies them to be someone who's earned the right to speak into you? That's an area of spiritual responsibility that's more on us as consumers than not only on the people who are standing up and saying the things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What I'm hearing, Marshall, is the invitation to like peek behind Oz's curtain and verify the sources that you're consuming and being a responsible consumer rather than just blindly. And just thinking about, my mind went to like pop culture, thinking about, authors who have massive followings and made cultural shifts for us, and then peeking behind that curtain and finding out, oh, they're actually a not kind, dangerous person. Cool. I need to now reevaluate, right? And I think, not everyone will always be honest, but I think, with the internet these days, it doesn't take very long to become a sleuth and find, is this someone I should be putting my faith and resources into?
Yeah.
And I think that even connected this because I went back to cultivated ignorance. So we're so much in pain, either our clients or therapists, because of the parallel process of witnessing so much trauma. There's just so much information, so much misinformation, so much need to label, to treat, to make money, it's all of these things. And then we are choosing to dissociate by just being ignorant or just believing or just have this need of give me something to believe so hard can you give me something that fulfills me? There's a void, right? And I'm like, excuse me, that's part of dissociation too.
Yeah. And even to remove loneliness.
Yes.
Almost every therapist I know is just desperately lonely.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, when I listen to this person teach or I read this person, I feel less alone. That's fine, right? But to make sure that we're naming that that's meeting a need for us, that we're not necessarily in that moment fully screening if this would be true for our clients, you know, and when we go into trainings or to read books, we need to have our mind of, does this feel true to me? And does this meet the people who are trusting me? And I think sometimes we don't ask the second question. We just go to what feels good or it feels popular or it makes me think, oh, I could be included here. That's where I get a little worried. And then I get even more worried when then you get included in a community and then the message is, and if you disagree with us, you're not a part of our community. And so then we end up coming into a door, maybe learning about ancestral wisdom and ancestral trauma and resources. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I finally found a little bit of belonging. And now if I change my mind or I challenge the authority, or if I say something unpopular, or if I have a conflict because I feel like my people group weren't represented, then I lose a seat at this table. And then that then again forces dissociation. So then we're learning through a dissociative mind because I'm not allowing all of my intuition to be here, because that might actually cause me to have to go out in exile again. And so we got dynamics, you know, that it's easy to have compassion for, but you still got to call out as a real problem within the field.
Oh my gosh.
I have to say, like, I love all of this right now. And then I'm thinking, oh, is it that why we just don't give a shit to be included? And we prefer to be alone and to read books and to be with my dogs instead of people? Did I say that?
I think there's many reasons.
Okay. I'll continue using that I'm an introvert then.
Marshall, thank you so much. I think this is really helpful. And I think you present this information in such a way that it's hearable. Like I can hear this, and especially because you're talking about, you know, two topics, even just for our little time together, that have been so villainized in our field that it does, you know, it can feel very off-putting, like, oh, dissociation? No, I don't. No, I'm not. I don't want to learn how to work with that. That's still so big and scary. So I appreciate you humanizing it with such compassion that it's, oh, this feels like a natural step forward, and this feels like a good starting place to relearn and unlearn what our programs spoon-fed us.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate the chance to talk about these things. And, you know, I might just say in closing that we could include ethics in this conversation. And as we kind of move out into our individual spaces and process this, maybe a good question would be, are there ethics I've been taught that are causing me to be less accepting, you know, less believing, less encouraging of intuition, less encouraging of autonomy? And if so, is that the kind of ethics that I want to believe in? And so if we could just come back to a guide of what's it like to be a part of the harvest and to stop mining from people, then I think we're all going to be fine.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So much.
We're all going to be fine. Okay. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, listeners. We will include Marshall information below this podcast description. Please reach out to him. He loves to hear from you. I'm just joking. Any complaints, send them to Maria. But we will include his contact information so that you can reach out and pay for consultation. It's not free. So we will include his link so that you can pay for consultation, which is well worth it, as you just noted with this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Till next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Heroes Welcome podcast. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and maybe, just maybe, a little fun along the way.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your fellow healers. Until next time, stay curious, stay playful,